So one of the things we've done is look at the US Postal Service change of address data. Now there are a lot of caveats with this. Not everyone uses the change of address form, especially young people, concentrated in places like Franklin County. So what we do is just compare what's happening with that data over time rather than look at it in absolute. So here's a map of our 11 county region. And you see in the blues and greens areas that have been gaining population based on the change of address relative to 2019, and places in the red and orange that may have lost population relative to a couple years ago. So a lot of movement towards the suburbs, and especially in 2020 and less so in 2021. So places like Marysville, Powell benefited from that movement. And then inner Columbus areas definitely struggled in 2020, although they had the greatest bounce back in 2021. Zip codes like 43215, 43201. They still have a ways to go to reach back to 2019 levels, but it's significant progress there. We do have certain areas like a Marysville and others that did well both years. So it wasn't just one bounce and coming back down or the other way around. So besides Marysville, Clintonville, Gahanna, places like that have done well both years. One thing to note with this kind of data is that it really depends also on the amount of housing development that's happening. So if you have a big new subdivision or apartment, multifamily coming online, that's going to spike the data up for that period, and then it's going to come down year on year when you look at it again. So some of the more general growth drivers that we're seeing, higher education institutions, they're a big part of our region, obviously, in terms of the future workforce, but they also just help the population grow. We've estimated that at Ohio State and college higher ed institutions in general, about 50% of graduates end up staying in the region, looking a couple years out after graduation. When we look at Ohio State, only a third of the students enrolling are from the Columbus region in the first place. So you look at a third coming in and then half stay, and each year that represents a gain of about 2,000 to 3,000 highly educated people just out of Ohio State being here. And then when we look at the other colleges across the region, we're gaining 5,000 to 6,000 people just from the fact that they're here, sucking people in from elsewhere and then keeping them here. Housing affordability is a tailwind for us. Obviously, the prices have gone up, and this has become more of an issue. But relative to other places, many other places around the country, still an advantage here. We have a growing economy, and then at least temporarily, it seemed like our lower reliance on public transportation has been helpful. If you look at places like New York, San Francisco, a lot of people ended up buying cars, right, to get around and not use the subway system. So that's had an impact in places like that. So, we'll see how this plays out in the long run. I think with some of the growth that we're expecting, we probably do need public transportation as part of that solution to connect people and jobs. But at least in the past couple years, it's probably been a benefit. Remote work is a bit of a mixed effect. It depends on, I think, other factors. If you're not tied to a location with a job, then other factors like family, friends, their proximity, quality of life, cost of living, those all become greater. And some people may be weighing their decision to stay here or come here because of that, or possibly moving out of here if they're not as tied to a job that brought them here in the first place. So headwinds in terms of population growth, a lot of these are macro, lower birth trends, lower immigration. We're seeing that across the US and here. Locally, I think a big one is just the whole housing, development, supply, that sort of process, just to, get for home builders to build new homes. There are other cities around the country that have more in the way of realistic zoning, land use. For example, in Nashville, downtown, if someone wanted to build a 40-story skyscraper, they can do that as of right. And here, it's a big negotiation process just to build 10 stories. So I know City of Columbus, they're working on updating their 70-year-old, 60-year-old land use zoning documents, and you have other municipalities that have this issue. So this is something that we need to see straightened out so that developers and the public in general have a more realistic baseline of what can be built. And then finally, we've always dealt with this. I think we've gotten better at this at One Columbus and with our partners, but there is a perception and regional brand issue. Some people may still have a blank slate in mind when they think about Columbus. Obviously, we don't have things like mountains and beaches. So just to overcome that, I think there's a lot here in terms of quality of life and the types of environments that we have. So we're pushing on that, alongside some of our big wins that hit the headlines. So real estate, I'll cover some commercial stuff here. I know there might be a few people interested in this. Industrial is going pretty crazy. Net absorption in 2020 for the Columbus region was 6 million for industrial. And then in 2021, it was 15 million. And here in this chart, you see the blue line, the square footage under construction. The red bars are the square footage being completed. And it's gone up over time since. And it's not keeping up. When we look around the region, bulk warehouse vacancies are 2%. And if you look at the Rickenbacker area, it's under 1%. So just more and more demand out there. Across the US, Q4 was the second best quarter for net absorption of industrial real estate. And it was only second best because Q3 2021 was the best quarter. And each quarter going back a year set a new record in this measure. So it's happening across the country. Office, quite a different story. Here you see net absorption across the US quarter by quarter going back to Q4 2019. We're hoping that the worst of the bleeding has stopped. The big red bars going down from Q3 20 to Q2 21. So hopefully this is going to turn positive. It has turned positive in some markets, not here quite yet. So looking at what things look like from the start of the pandemic, this is net absorption across Columbus and other markets of similar size across the US, and most of these are negative. In our market, we've had negative net absorption of 1.7 million square feet. And you think about that, you think, okay, that office space is gone and people have moved to working from home. How many rooms does that translate into a residential environment? 8,000, 10,000 rooms. So you're adding that on top of more millennials buying homes and other demand factors, and that's part of the reason we're seeing the housing price appreciation and low inventories that we do. So digging into work from home a little bit, these maps show JP Morgan Chase's McCoy Center in Polaris using cell phone data, looking at what the commute origins to that Polaris location looked like in April to November 2019 on the left versus the same period in 2021 on the right. The volume in 2021 was less than half of what it was in 2019, but that represented progress actually, because in 2020 it was only 15% of what it was in 2019. So this is an example of the kind of data that we're trying out to understand what's happening with commutes and things like work from home. Despite what's happening in office, there's still a lot of product in the pipeline being completed. So Columbus, amongst our 35 metro set of mid-sized peers, it ranked number 12 in 2021 in office completed, and number 9 for the square footage currently under construction. So there's still a lot happening in office, and I think what we're going to see is a divergent market, a flight to quality. No one wants the Class B, Class C office, or maybe even some of the older Class A. But if you're building high quality product, tenants are still going to flock to that. Okay, we'll get into housing. This data is from Zillow, which probably may not be the favorite amongst many of you. But in terms of easy comparability across metros, because I definitely do look at the Realtors data, but sometimes it's easier to look at another source to compare metros. This is showing the median number of days a listing goes from new to pending on the Zillow site. You see Columbus, it wasn't that great in the first place. When you look at 2019, other metros took longer for those listings to go pending. And then in 2021, in June at least, it was just 3 days for the typical listing to go from new to pending, at least on that site. And I know this problem exists across the country, but it does seem more severe here. And part of this is just because we haven't been building enough. A few months back, we took a look at MI Homes markets, the 15 or so that they're active in, and compared population growth in the past decade on the left, housing starts in the same period in the middle, and job growth on the right. And what you see happening here is in the middle between the charts, we have columns of data showing the ratio of population to housing, and then jobs to housing. And we're amongst the highest in terms of our population growth relative to the housing starts. So the housing is not keeping up. And then, at least in this set, if you look at the ratio of job growth to housing starts, we have the highest. So we've had a ton of job growth, and the housing's not keeping up. This ratio is at 1.8 in our market. You know, realistically, if you're talking about a sustainable pattern of growth between jobs and housing, it should probably be more like 1.2. So this is something that we're wrestling with. Workforce trends this data goes back to 2010, showing the growth of the Columbus MSA labor force. And then you see the big dip that happened with the lockdown, and it's come back in fits and starts since then. But we're still about 60,000 people short of where we should be, you know, when we look at pre-pandemic trends. And this is having ramifications everywhere, right? The manufacturing supply chains or in the construction trades, getting stuff built on time. So it's a big impact. So there are a lot of different parts of this. Part of it is childcare. There are 31,000 fewer childcare jobs in the US compared to pre-pandemic. And if you think about your classroom ratios in that setting, that might be 1 million potentially working parents who are not working. We've had 1.2 million fewer immigrants in 2017 to 2020 compared to 2013-16. The silver tsunami is definitely taking place. Baby boomers, or even people who are not quite at that age yet, are seeing the opportunity to retire with higher value assets and then not coming back with the pandemic. And then the Brookings Institution, they've estimated that 1.5 million people may be out of the labor force because of long COVID effects. And then finally, there was a lot of brouhaha last year about the federal benefits and whether that was having an impact. And that's something that, didn't shake out, at least at the time, but I believe there might be a lag effect there. And here's why. So even though the stimulus went away, a lot of people had pent-up savings because of that. And part of what's happened is that the delinquency rates, whichever financial institution you look at, these are a selection of companies that have a major presence here, Discover, Alliance Data, Huntington, they all went down, actually, during the pandemic. And it sort of bottomed out in May, June 2021, whether you look at mortgages or personal loans. And then it's starting to creep back up. So loan demand is starting to pick up a little bit. Credit card demand is starting to pick up a bit, but it's still historically low. So this might take some time to play out well into later this year before this has any bearing on people deciding to come back into the labor force due to financial reasons. And then finally, I'm going to cover our economic development activity, including Intel. Just reviewing 2021 first. I'm saving the best for last. 2021 was a big year for us, 60 projects, which is kind of normal for us, but in terms of these other metrics, the jobs created, payroll, capital investment, those were all record numbers for One Columbus and our region. So 2021 was a great year, and then 2022 obviously has been a historical one for sure. So the first row of data, it shows the results in January 2022. You see the big jobs committed number, 3,745, and then the $20.2 billion investment. A lot of that was Intel, of course. But then we have other projects going on, and our outlook for the quarter is to have even more activity, 1,400 more jobs, 16 more projects. So it's looking pretty strong, a big bounce back from where we were in the middle of 2020. So Intel, you've all seen the news, 3,000 jobs. And this is just phase one, right? The first couple of fabs. There could be more down the road if you look at their other sites. They have a whole bunch of these. So this might take a decade or more to fully play out. $405 million payroll. So the average salary is well above $100,000, around $130,000. So yeah, if you know anyone who has the talent to work there, I think they'll need people. And then $20 billion capital investment. I tallied up how much investment Honda, the big Honda presence we have in Union County, Logan County, how much they did over time, and they're a great company, a great partner in the region. But in terms of incentivized capital investment, it totals up to maybe $13 billion over 30 plus years. So you look at Intel at 20, and in one fell swoop, it sets the record. So it really is a game changer for our region. The largest investment in all of the state's history. We expect big multiplier effects in terms of construction jobs, the indirect and support jobs, not just in the immediate semiconductor industry, but things like related to industrial processes, chemical processes. There's a whole lot of things going on that we're digging into the supply chain now. And there's going to be an impact amongst the Intel suppliers that are already here. So $87 million currently spread among 140 suppliers isn't that big a figure, but with Intel here, that business is going to boom for a lot of those firms. So what's next? They're hiring now. It's all facilities construction based. So that's going to take some time to build. The actual start of production will be in 2025. That's towards when you'll see more and more of the jobs phasing to operations. Key next steps, One Columbus and our partners, whether it's the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, CODA, AAP, others, we're working on things like infrastructure, workforce, transportation, housing is going to be a big topic, and then on our business development end, figuring out how to recruit suppliers into the region. So it's a big project, lots of moving parts. People keep asking us questions, and we still don't have answers to a lot of these. But yeah, if you grab me here, I don't know how much time we have, or later on after the session, I'd be happy to talk more in detail about it. So thank you so much.
I like coming here, but it would be a lot funner to do this in June. Just had to say it. So every year I have to come up with a new speech topic. And of course, last year, if you all recall, I did the 3 R's because we went old school last year through the economy in 2020. So last year I thought it was the 3 R's, but this time it was recharge, reignite, reinvent. We reinvented how we did business. Am I right on this? So this year I decided, for the chalkboard to the whiteboard, the number one question I get, when's this housing bubble going to burst? And my answer is, this is not a housing bubble. It's all about Econ 101. It's all about supply and demand. Demand is growing and supply can't keep up with it, and it's been exacerbated and even changed because of our logistics and supply chain issue. Everyone agree with me on that? So Econ 101, y'all remember that it's all about supply and demand. Now, my first speeches this year were in the Great Lakes region and Minnesota, as they say there. And you know, I grew up on a sheep ranch in Colorado, and my wife grew up on a cattle ranch in the mountains. We're both in southwestern Colorado. And she and I have agreed on one thing: we will never live where there's snow ever again. And that's my first presentation. I'm thinking, you people are stupid. That's, you know, of course, my friend says, hey, we're going to do some steaks on the grill. And of course, I live in Houston, and he says, and the good news is your beer won't get warm. And he says, we got an automatic cooler. And I says, you know, in Texas, we're smart enough to drink that cold beer and get a second one and drink it too. So you think, of course, my hotel room, man, what do y'all think? Snow all came off the roof, the metal roof that night. And I woke up and I thought, how am I going to get out in the morning? The answer is they actually dig you out before you're supposed to come out. So, and I love this one. Brains required, speed limit 25, autos and pickups, snow tires okay, carry brains. Drivers ignoring winter conditions may be subject to natural selection. You know, the neat thing is you can't make this stuff up. I mean, oh, and of course they sent me a few more afterwards and you know, all this stuff. So here we are, here's a visualization of 2020. I mean, the wheels just came off, am I right? March the 11th, 2020, the wheels came off. And we should have known about 2020. We should have known about 2020. This is going to be a hangover. Now, I've never met anyone yet that admitted they drank 2020. All their friends did, but they did not. Am I right? And no one here has ever drank 2020. I get that one. And so, some of y'all were prepared for this pandemic. Fisher-Price's happy hour playset includes a pretend bar, stools, and beer bottles ages 3 and up. You have to admit we drank a lot. By the way, this is not real. Someone photoshopped it, but that's the creativity I want everyone to have in their business. Who thinks that's kind of brilliant? By the way, if it was available, I'd buy each one for one of our grandkids. My wife would kill me for that. But so the pandemic comes along, and we just get drunk along with it. We just get drunk along with it. I said this on the first day of the pandemic, my first virtual speech, that March the 11th. And I said, y'all realize this is a virus. And we still have the cold, and we still have the flu, and we go through different kinds of flu and cold. This is not going to go away. Who agrees with me on this? We'll just adapt and live with it. And I decided I wasn't going to let this thing change me. I normally do 180 to 190 flights a year. In 2020, I did 97. Remember, this started in early March. And last year, I did 157. And so I just decided just get on with it, and let's get it on. So I took this picture in about 35 years ago at the Bitter End Yacht Club. Who's ever been to the Bitter End at the British Virgin Islands? Anyone in here been there? It's a beautiful place. We were some friends that owned a boat. We don't own a boat. Smarter than that. Y'all know what BOAT stands for? B-O-A-T, break out another 1,000. Y'all knew that. Anyway, so I said we parked, but we actually anchored behind it. And I had to get my digital camera. Digital cameras weren't as neat then. There were fewer pixels. And I got in the dinghy. You can see the front of the dinghy on the left-hand side there. And I'm going up there because I didn't want to turn on the motor. I got my digital camera. And this guy comes out of the back of the boat and he says, what do you think you're doing? I said, you're a builder. He said, how did you know? Look at the name of the boat. I said, change order. He said, yeah, that paid for this boat. And I kind of get that. But the reason I thought of using this slide this year, you and I just went through the biggest change in our lifetimes. Who agrees with this? And every time there's change, there's winners and losers, right? And the big winner was housing. Big loser was leisure and hospitality. Another big winner, big loser initially was commercial, because commercial sales just plunged. Well, I'll tell you right now, in the U.S. we sold more commercial real estate last year than any year in history. Wow. So every time there's change, there's winners and losers. And most of y'all in this room have been the big winners. Who are our builders in here? Yeah, everyone's big winners except y'all, because even though you can sell every house you can build, you can't build that many houses, so we don't have any more lots, you can't get stuff, am I right? And look how much more it costs. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. So I want to talk to you about some change being pretty good. That 1956, that's the original IBM 5 megabyte hard disk drive. This presentation you're watching right now is 70 megabytes. It would take 14 of those to store this presentation. And now they give away those memory sticks at trade shows that'll store 100 times that. That's not a bad change. So some change is good. Oh, and talk about change the way we do business. In 1956, IBM wouldn't sell you this hard drive. They would lease it to you for $3,200 per month. That's $50,000 in today's dollars. So multiply that times 14, that's what it would take just to store this presentation. So always look out for trends. This morning I started at 1 a.m. I'm an early morning person, but have some long days. If you're an economist, if you don't read every day and learn new stuff, you're just out of touch. And so I noticed last October the trend that started scaring me to death was crime. And I will tell you this, it's my major issue for the United States of America right now is crime. Who kind of agrees with me on this? Man, if you can't walk out your door down the street safely, or let your kids play in the yard, so we got something wrong about our society. Everyone agree with this? So just literally at the beginning of this year, I was in a major city, had a 4-block walk, 9 a.m. to go down the street. Let me pull this down, there we go. 9 a.m. to go down the street and going out of this hotel, we're going 4 blocks down, great, beautiful area of a major city. And the doorman asked me, the car guy, he says, where are you going? I said, I'm walking 4 blocks. He said, I'll go get the shuttle for you. I said, 4 blocks, it's a beautiful day. And his answer was, had one of our people staying here get shot walking that walk last week. What are we doing, folks? So I decided to show you some crimes that at least you could tolerate after eating chicken. So most of y'all, who's never heard me? I haven't eaten chicken since 1982, so if you want to eat fowl, they call it fowl for a good reason. We'll go from there. Who's had this done to them in this room? Hey, look at the hand. There's some hands in the back, guys. In Boise, Idaho, 2 weeks ago, 7 people in little Boise, Idaho had this done. Oh, and they're doing it in front of your house. They're doing it in parking garages. They're doing it in front of businesses. They're doing it to high-end cars. They're doing it, this is sacrilege. They're doing it to pickups. And of course, you gotta love this one. These crooks know it's cheaper to go to Harbor Freight and get the jacks than go to the lumber yard and buy wood. Am I right? You never thought of that, but you kind of start thinking about this stuff. Worse than this crime wave, it's not just you and me. It's hurting our kids, too. Well, and it's nothing safe, sacred, or anything else like anymore. Let me tell you something else worse, and I'll tell you the rest of the story. That's astounding to me. I'm one of these people that I walk up to every police officer I see and I say, thank you for what you do. That's just me. Yeah, okay, there's a few bad apples in every box, but they're mostly good, and they make our lives so much more palatable and safe. So, and Mark, you can't answer this. All right. What does 709 mean? 709, what's it mean? Oh, used to be a professor at Texas A&M for 10 years. Bonus points for funny answers, even if you're wrong. Anyone want to guess what 709 means?
The amount of new agents last month.
Amount of new agents last month. You know, you get bonus points. That's actually a pretty good answer. I like you. She's good.
Inventory.
What's that? Current inventory? It's actually a little bit higher than that, but about 3 times that. But that's another good answer. This one will blow you away. The pandemic started 709 days ago. Yeah. I said the first speech I gave, I said, you know, this pandemic will not be over as a pandemic until you can walk on a crowded elevator without a mask. Or you can take the last seat in the airplane, a sold-out airplane without a mask. Or you went to a Texas A&M football game with 100,000 of raving Aggies without your mask. And we did that in October. How about that? So we're getting there. We're just not there yet. And yes, I'm a Raven Aggie fan because I'm one of those guys. So here's the initial takeaways. Housing is more valuable. The reason we actually increased demand for housing in 2020 during the pandemic, not initially, but it caught on. We have the highest intrinsic value of housing in our lifetimes because we're spending more time at home than ever before. Therefore, where you live impacts your lifestyle and your quality of life more than it ever has. Therefore, we all want to live in a nice property. And not only are we seeing, well, think about this, in December, this December, nationwide existing home sales from NAR, National Association of Realtors, sales of $1 million plus homes compared to a year ago were up 61%. Wow. Oh, and we actually saw a large number of people that were renting apartments. They actually rented bigger apartments and better apartments. They actually, with better views and more amenities. One of the studies, how many of y'all deal with apartments in here? Manage, sell, look, a lot of hands. We're gonna do a lot about apartments today. This one report I read, and it was one of my tweets, you're gonna have to follow me on Twitter. What they did, they surveyed 200,000 apartment dwellers, and they said, are you gonna move in 2022? If the answer was yes, then they asked you, well, why? Number one reason, I'm gonna move, 49% said they're gonna move to something more affordable for the amenities they wanted. And that's one of the reasons our suburbs are gaining so much in rents, more so than our central cities now, because people are actually, well, they're de-densifying. We're moving out to areas that are typically newer, better amenities, bigger, and cheaper for that same type unit. And that's going to continue. The pandemic's doing that. Second one, this pandemic accelerated pre-existing trends. It didn't create trends, at least on these pre-existing ones. You and I were already buying a lot e-commerce. We just bought a lot more. That's not going to change. We had another one on these things. We'll talk it. Y'all call it work from home. I've been on the road doing this stuff for well over 30 years. I actually don't need an office. I just need connectivity. And it's not work from home, it's work from any place. Am I correct? Yeah. One of the other trends, we already saw people exiting the Northeast, the New England states. The New England states, I count those as Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey. And they were going to the Sun Belt and to Florida in particular. We already, for 50 years, we've seen people leave California because of high taxes, an issue. They were going to the Pacific Northwest and the Southwest. This just accelerated that. Just a sideline. The current governor of California wants to double their personal income tax rate. They already have the highest in the United States at 13.3% top. They want to go to 26%. If California were to do that, I guarantee you it'd stimulate people leaving California, am I right? I look at Elon Musk, just in Houston, Texas. Oh, and he saved $4 billion this year re-domiciling to Texas. We don't have a state income tax. But you wait till he pays our property taxes and he'll wish he maybe stayed there, I don't know. Permanent changes, they say if you do the same thing for 66 days in a row, on average you have a new habit. We've done 709 days, y'all. A lot of these habits are going to stick with us. In fact, the sideline on offices, 35 to 40% employees, we've had 2 surveys on this, say if they're forced to go back to the office to work, they'll go find a job where they don't have to go back to the office to work. I actually think we've eliminated the need for a third of our offices. And the big deal's conversions, whether it becomes housing. We just did a title policy on a conversion of a major office building. It's all going to be labs. They're centralizing all the lab work in one of the cities in this thing. And then we sold record U.S. real estate last year. Never sold that much. We're probably going to hit that same pace this year, I do. Part of that's inflation. Remember, historically, both housing and commercial real estate perform well with respect to inflation. You don't want to be in the stock market, you don't want to be in bonds, and that's one of the reasons I think we're seeing people go in there, just to protect their investments. So I want to show you this one. This is Census Bureau. They just came out with this about a month ago. Every year, forget the census, the every 10-year census, every year they have to estimate the population of each state. And so and these are percentage growth. And it's July 1 of 2021 versus July 1 of 2020. Look at Idaho, up 2.9%. Your top 10 there's big states, little states. I have no idea why Delaware's there, because 2 people probably moved to it, I don't know. But there's our big, that's where they're heading. There's Ohio, your 37th best. You actually lost 0.1% of all your people last year. So you still have a net out-migration as a state, not necessarily as a city. And then here's the bottom list, the dregs of society, DC, which we're going to include as a state temporarily, New York, Illinois, Hawaii, California, Louisiana, Massachusetts. There's no surprises here. I don't think this changes much. Who kind of agrees with me? Don't think this changes much. So jobs are everything, and I want y'all, 2010, right here, do y'all see that? Guys, that's the bottom of the Great Recession, the trough. In the previous 24 months, we lost 8 million jobs, and they called that the Great Recession. We added from 2010 to 2020, we had about 23, 24 million jobs, and we lost every one of them in 50 days in March and April of 2020. Now, we lost 8 million in 24 months. Here we lost 24 million in 50 days. Now, the good news is we've recovered some. The bad news is we don't need the others. Those jobs that people that are currently unemployed no longer exist. We figured out a way to do that without them. I'll show you why, part of that in a minute. I know y'all have all this shell formation here, but we're not talking oil and gas, but I'm using oil and gas as an example of how businesses are changing the way they do business. But we're going to talk oil and gas because the more stressed you are financially, the more quickly you'll change your business habits. And I can't think of hardly anyone else that's ridden a harder roller coaster than oil and gas. You go to 2014, the U.S. is producing 8.8 million barrels. Average price that year was 93 bucks. We had about 525,000 workers actually in extraction or direct support to it. Fast forward to 2020, the price dropped 58%. I want you to just absorb that. Your income per widget sold, whatever it was, just drops, well, we're going to round it to 60%. How do you stay in business? Well, they did 2 things. Number one, they increased production. They're going to sell more widgets and make less per widget, so to speak. Production went up, we're going to round it to 30%. Price dropped 64%, but we're now producing 30% more oil with 40% fewer workers. Every business in America is doing this as we speak today. I guarantee you they are. Guys, and technology is helping us. We're producing, get this one, 30% more oil with 76% fewer drilling rigs. And this is where you have to think about where technology can help you in your business. Am I correct? Intel has no problem realizing they can build a chip plant because the demand for chips is going to do nothing but grow. Who agrees? That's kind of like take that one to the bank and cash it. Okay, so that was the good news. Let me give you the other news. Every year, the Tax Foundation, they're a not-for-profit research group out of Washington, D.C., they rank all 50 states on 5 taxes: corporate income tax, personal income tax, retail sales tax, unemployment tax, and property tax. Best place tax-wise to do business, whether it's the lowest in the country, is number 1 is Wyoming, number 2 is South Dakota, number 3 is Alaska, number 4 is Florida. I went around this because not a lot of firms want to move up to Alaska unless you're in the caribou business or something else like that. Worst places to do business: number 1, New Jersey, number 2, California, number 3, New York, Connecticut, Maryland, Minnesota. I bet y'all didn't know Minnesota had that high taxes, did y'all? You're 37th best. Well, the good news is there's 13 worse than you. The bad news is there's 36 better. And that's kind of amazing that you got the Intel deal when you look at this, am I correct? But remember, Intel's not domiciled as a corporate headquarters here. So there's a difference in that on this one. Let's talk jobs. And we'll get down to local level jobs here in a minute. How many jobs did everyone lose? The U.S. lost, like I told you, about 24 million. And look at Michigan up there. By the way, 24 million was 14.7% of all jobs. Michigan lost almost 1 out of every 4 jobs at the onset of the pandemic. Wow, that's sobering. Utah barely lost any, about 1 out of 12. Y'all, you lost a bunch, 15.8%. You lost a greater percentage of jobs than the U.S. lost. It's the type of jobs that you had and where they were at and what they were doing. But here's the key, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at the month before the pandemic, which is February 2020. We're going to compare it to December of 2021. That's the latest data available. And we now have 5 states that have as many jobs as ever or more jobs than ever. Utah, Idaho, Texas, Arizona, Montana. And then you got 5 other states that are within 1%. Y'all are still down 3.6%. I don't think those kind of jobs are coming back again because we figured out how to do business without them. My hotel, I checked in here, it's here for, checked in, at me or you or what? Okay, well, I'll keep talking. So I checked in for a couple nights. They didn't clean my room yesterday. Even though at check-in I said, could you please clean my room every day? So I talked to Miss Personality at the front desk this morning. And I said, you didn't clean my room. She said, well, you have to ask for that at check-in. I said, I did. And I said, then I asked her, what % of your housekeeping staff have you laid off? She said, half. In other words, we don't need those people anymore. So then you look at this one. Here's the latest 1-month job growth. Hey, good news is you're 0.2%. Bad news is you got 4 times that in states like West Virginia and Iowa, for God's sake. Iowa's outperforming your state. You should feel bad about that. Iowa. Here's Columbus. And here's the neat thing I want to tell you. I want you to look at that trough in 2010 and draw a straight line across. Unlike the U.S. that lost every job added, numerically speaking, in the last 10 years, you didn't. But part of that, part of it's education. Part of it's government, education, state capitals, those kind of things. In downturns, just never get as bad as anyone else because the government is one of the last people to lay off people. Kind of intriguing. You recovered a bunch, and it was kind of flatlining. Of course, you add Intel on that and the other things, and Intel's going to bring a lot more jobs than Intel brings. The exogenous factor outside is going to be a lot bigger than inside Intel. Just go to Spartanburg, Tennessee, when BMW built, South Carolina, excuse me, BMW built their X Series plant. Every X Series BMW sold in the world is made in that town. And now you have hundreds of parts suppliers that moved into that town. And that's where the multiplier, like Kim talked about on this one, goes from. So then I figured out, we just got to do this. Let's look at towns above 200,000 jobs. And there's your top jobs. By the way, you're 55th on that list, that bottom blue line. You're down 2.6%. You're not down as much as the state is at 3.6% from before the pandemic, but you're still down. But look at most of these are a little bit smaller towns, even though I broke it off at 200,000. But then you get cities like Austin, Texas. Tech is everything, I'm going to tell you this. Because everything you and I are doing, and I'm going to tell you this, if you're shuffling papers today, no. The quicker you go all digital is the quicker you'll work smarter, not harder. Who thinks I'm right on this? Yeah, and we're going there, lenders and everyone else. So this is United Van Lines. Let's look where they moved from and where they moved to. And this isn't based on the total number of moves. This is based on the percentage of inbound and percentage of outbound moves. And the top 10 states of Vermont, I can tell you why it's Vermont, because a lot of people wanted to get out of New York and New Jersey, and they wanted to go where it was lower density and a little bit more affordability, and Vermont was their destination. Then South Dakota, South Carolina. Remember, South Dakota, second best place tax-wise in the United States to move to. That's a lot of company owners are saying, out of Minnesota in particular, where they have really high taxes. West Virginia, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Oregon, Idaho, Rhode Island. Top outbound states, you're 9th on that list. Aren't you glad you're not number 1 in that category? But it's still not good to be in the top 10. Top inbound metros in 2021, On that page, 3 of them are in Florida. On this page, well, you got another 3 of them in Florida. Florida's a big winner about this, but notice most of these are small towns. We have created a new trend of exiting urban centers and moving to small towns. I think that continues. Anyone else agree with me? Let's tell you that. So I'm going to talk to my realtors now. Have y'all ever seen a house that had a swing off the cathedral ceiling in the living room? This shows you how bored we got at home during this pandemic. I also want to know, how do you write that up in the MLS comments section? A home for swingers? I don't think you do that. I mean, but you don't even have to have a big cathedral ceiling to do this. And keep watching this, don't look back. All you need is a stairwell. So watch this one, of course that's all because of COVID. Okay, we got a swing here. Keep watching, keep watching, keep watching. There we go, bounce. That's pretty cool. Okay. So realtors, because where are we going here this year? This is hard to forecast, so I'm going to look at Fannie Mae's and the MBA's forecast. First of all, they're forecasting total residential lending for home sales. In other words, both the number of home sales new and existing times the median price or average price, whichever one you want. They're saying that we're going to be up about 7.7% this year. Let's say 8%. I think mostly that's price. I don't think we're going to sell many more homes because you have to have a listing to sell a home. Next year, they're kind of seeing that flat. So I'm telling you, realtors in this room, you got another great year. Who agrees with me? You got another great year. My home builders do too if they can only get something to sell, get their supply chain. Who are my lenders in here? Lenders, raise your hands. Okay, you better take that spare piece of cake off the table here because you're going to need it. Guys, last year on lenders, 70 to 80% of their business was refi. This year, that's going to drop by more than half. And next year, drop almost another 10%. So let me put this in human terms. If you worked as a loan officer in a lending company that had 10 loan officers in 2021, you need 6 this year, and maybe 5 next year. That's half. We all know every time you get that kind of cut in revenues, you get industry consolidation. I'm not worried about the best of the best not having a job. I'm worried about the people who aren't the best of the best. And so if you think your answer was 709 realtors last month, when this happens, you're going to get half of all lenders coming in here to be a realtor too. I want to tell you that.
We'll make them go be appraisers.
Be appraisers. We don't have to do that anymore. Think about this. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac now said we no longer have to go in a house to do an appraisal, which means you can do everything from the desktop, which means automated appraisals are going to rule, which means they can't be any more misaccurate than the appraisers. And I'm allowed to say that because I was an appraiser. I had my own appraisal company. Realtors, did any of y'all use this line? Best realtor one-liner, can you see yourself quarantining here? Did anyone of y'all use that? All right. Home sales, U.S. Black line, that's total number of sales in the prior 12 months. You read it on the right. Green bars, read on the left. That's median price. I want you to notice that both sales and price flatlined last year. Do you know why? Because our home prices went up so much, they can't afford anything more. They have a simple payment they can make, which removes some people from the market, and you can only spend so much of your salary on housing, and we're there. So what's going to happen this year as interest rates go up? And by the way, this morning, Freddie Mac announced that the average commitment rate issued by lenders last week was 3.92%. Yeah, that's a lot of basis points above the 2.65% we saw in April of 2020. So I actually think that sales remain kind of flat this year. And depending on what interest rates do, that price could be kind of flat this year, which means you may not get that 10% boost this year, 8%, which means if you want to have as good a year as last year, you got to make sure you sell as many homes you did last year, bottom line. By the way, this is the best sales last year, the last month of the year, on 12-month moving basis, the best housing sales, existing home sales we've seen in the U.S. in 14 years. Now, here's Columbus. Your sales didn't flatline. You're a lot like Austin, Texas. We know there's a bunch of jobs coming, which means I really don't want to sell now, right? I'm going to hang on, just stay here, because I know my value is going to go up. Am I right? Because the builders, the Mac. Let me tell you the story about the builders. Our kitchen island cooktop went out, all right? Worthless piece of gin or something like that. My wife and I go down to the appliance store, and we want a new appliance and not a gin air. And he said 4 months. And my wife says, we're going to be on a hot plate in a microwave for 4 months? He says, yep, if you're lucky. And he said, if you don't think that's good, y'all know those beautiful built-in stainless steel refrigerators they sell? Y'all know the name of it? Someone say it so I remember it. Sub-Zero. If you order a Sub-Zero product today, they're going to guarantee you at least 12 to 14 months for delivery. I've got a friend in Florida, he's going to send me a picture. He says, I've got a new $4.8 million home, and in where this Sub-Zero fridge is going to be is an old Sears Kenmore placeholder. Now, your price is going down because we've hit the limit of what people can pay. Who agrees? We're there. I mean, that's it. Now, how are we doing on sales momentum coming into this year? I want you to ignore yellow. I don't even want to talk about 2020 statistics because it's an anomaly. In fact, the only time I will ever look at 2020 on any statistic anymore is if we had another pandemic to see what we did last time. So I want to compare that pink to the green. I want to compare 2019 to 2021. And notice that pink is higher than every green, which means we carried really good housing sales momentum into this year. Here you are here in Columbus. That pink versus the green, y'all carried great momentum into this year. But you'd have to have something sell to sustain that. Oh, and thank you, Marquis, on this one. Guys, can you, 6/10 of a month of inventory means if you don't get a listing, 18 days from now, you have nothing left to sell. Oh, don't feel smug about that. Last time I was in Boise, they had 9.9 days inventory. You got twice as much as they do. But their home prices went up 39% last year. Great statistics, and you're fortunate to have a Realtor Association does such a great job on this. We now want to live by really nice neighbors. Is anyone going to do this? Who thinks this is brilliant besides me? And my wife will not let me do this. She said, the last thing you're going to do is come home and go out to the back fence to have a beer with the neighbors. I think it's brilliant. If any of y'all do this, send me a picture because I have a video like this one. So I'm going to show you, remember Econ 101? The reason that home values are so high is demand's outstripping supply. So I'm going to do the 10 years from 2010 through 2019 because I'm not going to look at 2020. All 2020 did was increase the demand for housing. Y'all agree with that? It did. It dramatically increased all housing, all kinds, whether it's apartments or anything else. So I've always said you needed 1.25 to 1.5 new jobs per new dwelling. That's a metric I created about 35 years ago. And it's worked out. I can tell you where home prices are going up or down, or if you overbuild, what have you. We built, in that 10-year period, we built 22 million plus new dwellings, apartments all the way to mansions. But we only added 10.5 million new housing units, which means we have over 2 jobs per new housing unit. So we entered 2020 short between 4.2 to 7.2 million dwelling units in the United States. That means this is not a bubble. Prices and rents are rising because we don't have enough of it based on demand. Now, can home values go down? Not only can they will eventually. And one of 2 reasons will cause it. We either build up too much. We're doing that in some cities right now. Building too much, believe it or not, it's going to be possible for y'all here on the supply chain stuff right now. Or dramatically decrease demand, and the next major recession will do that. Who thinks I'm right? We don't know what's going to cause that recession right now, but it will. I've been through 3 cycles in my lifetime when housing values dropped a bunch, and it was always about supply and demand. And almost, Our housing bubble decreased not as much by supply, but by demand. It's that we oversupplied the market, so we can see that coming about. Here's Columbus. You have 2.86 new jobs. Remember, you only need 1.25 to 1.5, which means you've just not underbuilt. You could have doubled. Well, what I say is y'all entered 2020 short 141,000, 169,000 dwelling units, and you can't catch up now. Now, we did build a lot more, particularly multifamily last year, but there's a reason for that. Our young people can't afford a down payment. They're going to be apartment dwellers. So this last one, too, I want to talk to my builders' expectations. When I tell you my builders are going to be hurting, okay, housing prices are blooming. This is from the National Association of Home Builders. One of my tweets, follow me on Twitter, DRTCJ. Top problems, headwinds builders expect. 91% building material prices. Number 2, time it takes to get materials. But that's 90%. 85% cost and availability of materials. 90% rising U.S. inflation. I'm concerned about inflation, I'll tell you that. We'll talk about that. Cost and availability of lots, and then 50% difficulty obtaining zoning or building permits. Now, I currently live, last 25 years, in Houston, Texas. Did you know it's the largest city in America that has no planning or zoning? I've told this story before, but I'll tell it to you again. A couple years ago, our office, our global headquarters office is in the Galleria in Houston. 2 blocks away, they're going to build, I think it was 38 floors of high-rise apartments. Let me tell you the price. Mid-level, 1,404 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, rented for $4,800 a month. Okay, great location, great amenities, super quality, all that kind of stuff. So that builder went down on Thursday afternoon to the Houston building permit department. You don't have to go to planning. He turned in his complete specs on the project that proved that he had utility access on site, he had ingress and egress, and that all his plans, that they were up to code. And we all agree it's got to be up to code. Guess how long it took him to get that permit issued? Monday morning. Builders, did anyone's jaw just hit the floor on this one? Yeah, so what Kim said, I'm going to back up with some data on this one. Oh, and then I want to also caution you all on first-time home buyers, because we're going to talk about affordability in a second, which is really scary to me. This was a neat study. It was done by Redfin, and they looked at it and they said to these first-time home buyers, where'd you get your down payment last year? 52% from their paychecks. So that's pretty cool. 24% from stimulus. 1 out of 4 from stimulus. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't expect any more stimulus. I'm going to also argue with you that the American Rescue Plan we did 12 months ago is causing the inflation right now. How do I know that? Because 57% of Gen Z and millennials took their stimulus check and bought cryptocurrency and stock. If you need money, you don't invest in cryptocurrency and stock. Am I right? All right. 23% saved extra, 22% worked a second job, 17% inheritance, 15% sold stocks, 12% were either cash gifts from their family or they sold crypto. And I'll say this out here because I'll just get away from the questions on crypto. I actually think that cryptocurrencies on average will drop 80%. They've already dropped a bunch. And there'll be survivors, don't get me wrong, but a lot of them are going to disappear. Who thinks I'm right on this one? I'll just put that out there. You can disagree with me all you want. And now I want to talk about federal government insanity. We're sitting here with our builders paying 200 to 300% more for framing hardwood, softwoods today. Did y'all know last November in Washington, D.C., they doubled the taxes on imported Canadian softwoods that we frame houses with? How many of y'all knew that? Went from 9% to 17.9%. What bothers me, not one national news service published that. That's scary because you can't even complain if you know what's going on, am I right? Oh, and what I'm going to try to tell you, and I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, you don't know the rest of the story, am I right? They're all lying to us, and that bothers me. All right. Affordability, I got crime, and then we're going to hit the affordability thing. All right, why am I so concerned about affordability? It's long-term concern. We're a country that was built by the middle class. Let me describe a second world or a third world country. Lots of poor, very few rich, and nobody in middle class. Now, let's talk about our typical middle class in the U.S. Most of them own a home. And it's our largest, for most of the middle class, it's our largest store of wealth. And if our first-time home buyers can't get into their housing now because of cost of homes, they never get to play in that game of creating a middle class, right? Look at the number, this scares me too, the number of adults over 65 that still have massive loans on their house. You're never going to retire. But if you've got your mortgage paid off and you retire, you got extra money on your pocket, am I correct? Do a reverse mortgage or anything else like that. So affordability. And I'm only going to talk about two numbers on here. That blue box on the bottom. And don't even look at the screen to tell you what this means. We go to 2020 and we know what interest rates were. We know what median home prices were. And I'm just going to assume you put 20% down. Oh, by the way, in 2020, even Fannie Mae and the MBA don't agree what rates were, and they don't agree what median home prices were, which I find rather odd since it's history and it's historical information. And so if you compare that monthly principal and interest payment, let's fast forward to next year. And let's say, based on their forecast of median price homes, you put 20% down, and the interest rate they forecast, that P&I payment, if Fannie Mae is correct, from 2020 to 2023 will have gone up 43%. That's just gut-wrenching to me. How many of y'all make 43% more? Oh, and if the MBA is right, that median household payment goes up 48%. I'm just trying to tell y'all, our young household formation rate now is going to be all apartments or single-family rentals, which is a whole new class. Next concern, inflation. Why am I concerned about inflation? Because it erodes the value of everything you own unless it's going up in value. Guys, we're at the highest inflation rate we've seen in exactly 40 years, 7%. Oh, and worse than that, I liked it when this 7% chart came out, and then I was talking to one of the Federal Reserve presidents, and he says, yeah, we're not worried about that. We use the PPI, the Product Price Index. Well, it went up 7.5% last month. And he was telling me it's much lower. Guys, how many of y'all are going to make 7 or 7.5% more this year? You have to do that just to stay even, which says we're going to have a weaker economy next year. It's one of the other reasons I think we're going to see a downward trend in housing sales, and I'm not going to go with Fannie's or the MBA's forecast. I want to talk about stock market insanity. And no, I'm not picking on Tesla. I think it's a very innovative vehicle, maybe the most innovative one I've seen in my life. When I'm critical of the stock market, I'm critical of what people are paying for stocks, because sometimes it makes no rational sense. And we're going to compare this with what people are paying for Tesla stock. So last year, Tesla sold globally about 900,000 vehicles. In the world last year, we sold 77 million. The 57 is coming up in a minute. So Tesla sold 1.2% of all the new cars sold in the world last year. But look what they're paying for the stock. Oh, and this is as of October, because I get this from Wolf Street. They don't run it every month. They do it, coming up and doing it again. Market cap is simply this. It's the closing stock price that day times the number of shares that are outstanding. In other words, on that day, if you bought every share at the closing price, you'd have paid over $1 trillion for Tesla. On that same day, the combined market cap of Toyota, Volkswagen, BYD, which is the biggest auto producer in China, Daimler, which is Mercedes, GM, BMW, Ford, Stellantis, which is Fiat, Honda, and SAIC, which is the second largest car maker in China, their combined market cap, and remember this is the group last year that sold 57 million vehicles, is the same as a company that sold 900,000. That is insanity. And that's why I'm glad you're parking your money in commercial real estate and housing, because this will erode. Who thinks I'm right on this? U.S. commercial real estate, best sales in 4 quarters in history in the fourth quarter last year. I think that a lot of this is for two reasons. We're scared to death of the stock market. We're scared to death of buying bonds if interest rates go up. And historically, commercial real estate performed well during periods of inflation. And this is a great place to park your money. I, right now, am way overweighted in real estate. Put that up front. This is the total commercial sales in the prior 12 months, so it's kind of a moving thing. Highest in history. Here's your Columbus commercial real estate sales. And notice that went up a little bit, y'all went up a bunch. Not only are people relocating to Columbus, Ohio, they're bringing money and buying commercial real estate too. Who thinks that's exciting? I do. That's a big fan about that. Yeah, you don't buy commercial real estate thinking you're going to sell it for a loss a year from now. Now, I think your biggest claim to fame here is logistics, and Kim kind of got over that. When you're down to 1% vacancy rate, yeah, you can't get any better than that. Washington, D.C. will tell us we saved Christmas, and logistics problem will be over at the end of this year, and I have one word for that, bull. It's going to take several years to get the supply chain back in order, and this is going to continue. But logistics is also the big winner. I want to show you these tweets. Guys, more than 1 billion square feet of industrial space was leased last year. All-time record. In fact, all-time record, it's the highest since CBRE started collecting these data. Rents last year on industrial real estate nationwide are up 11%, record growth to $9.10 per square foot average, record rents, and vacancy dropped to 3.2%, record low. This is where I'm talking about, and it's just not Intel plants or things like that. How many of y'all shop a lot more online now? Everything you buy from an online store does not come from a retail storefront, it comes from an industrial building in the back, bottom line. Oh, and then last year, we have 432 million square feet of positive net absorption nationwide, which is amazing. We got over half a billion square feet under construction, but at the right place, it's no big deal. So let's talk apartments. I already told you I'm a big fan of apartments. And why? Because we're short on houses. Here's our apartment sales last year. By the way, I told you we sold a record amount of commercial real estate. 1 out of every $2 of commercial real estate sales last year were apartments. Did you hear what I said? Half of all commercial real estate sales last year were apartments. And this is going to continue because even if rents don't go up as much, we're short of housing. Short of housing. Here's your Columbus apartments. All right, we got hit a record, not all that much higher than it was in 2019, but still pretty doggone good. So I want to look at this one. This is the National Rental Market Survey, and this comes from Apartment List. Here's the top growth. This goes from March of 2020 to December of last year. Can you imagine in Naples, Florida, the average rent's up 48.9% on apartments? Well, that's huge. Sarasota, 48%. Tampa, 34%. Boise, 33%. Guys, all I'm trying to tell you is the housing market's not a bubble because you got to live someplace. You either own or rent, and there it is. Catch on that. I did throw you in the Ohio cities. Rent growth since March 2020. Cincinnati's up 12.6%. You're up 12.4%. Cleveland, 2.6%, but well, it's Cleveland for God's sake, and we'll go from there. I like Cleveland, don't get me wrong. I want to show you this one, and I'm going to actually break out Columbus on apartment sales. These are real capital analytics data. Go to that top minus 3.8%. The total number of sales last year were down 3.8%. Part of that is a lot of owners of apartments don't want to sell right now because the rents are going up so much. You don't want to sell the goose that lays the golden eggs. You want to sell the golden eggs. Next one on this one, you look at total sales and dollar volume up 50% year over year. And then the next one, cap rates. Remember, the lower the cap rate, the more you pay for the property. Cap rates dropped almost 100 basis points. And then the last one, and this one's kind of critical for y'all. Again, I'm going to skip 2020 because it's an anomaly. In 2019, your average apartment here was selling for $80,400. It's 98,800, let's do 98,900. Monday of this week, I spoke to an apartment owners conference in South Miami. Most of these people, first of all, to be in the room, you had to own at least 1,000 units. You had to pay $5,000 to be there, okay? So they owned a bunch of apartments, they invested in apartments, and they're wanting to get out of New Jersey and New York. And I had a guy come up to me, he says, can I really buy apartments for less than $100,000? Because they're paying $400,000. And I said, yeah, and you actually get a higher cap rate than New York and New Jersey, therefore you're actually getting a better net cash flow. And now you know why I'm really thinking that not our primary cities apartments are going to grow much, particularly on the Eastern Seaboard and Chicago, but I think our secondary and tertiary market apartment value is going to go up a lot more. How many of y'all know what omni-channel marketing is? It's a term that's been in the retail trade for a long, long time. And I want y'all to think about omni-channel. In other words, well, I'm going to use this example to tell you what it is. Realtors, for those of y'all that were in business 25 years ago, how did you sell a house? Well, you got a listing and you put it on the MLS, except no one that wasn't a member of the MLS could see it. Only brokers and agents could see it. You put a sign in the front yard. On Saturdays or Sundays, you tied a bunch of balloons to that sign, and down in the corner, you tied a bunch more balloons that said, open house this direction. You may have advertised the local newspaper in the real estate book, and that's how you sold a home. Think how we've changed. We're now doing omni-channel. That means multiple channels. You can sell homes almost any direction, and social media is one of the most important. And I just don't mean Facebook, I mean Twitter. I have a lady in Houston, Texas that follows me on Twitter. She had 312 sides last year. She and her team member, 312 sides last year. And I said, where do you get the most traction? She says, every listing I get, I stick on Twitter, and I pay for that to go out to a select group, because you can pay for tweets to go out. How many of y'all knew that? She pays to hit specific profiles. And she says, I found out that Twitter is better than advertising in the real estate book or the local newspaper or anything else. Y'all starting to rethink how you sell. Notice we got TV in there, and I thought, nobody uses TV to sell homes. About 4 weeks ago, I've been on the road so much. I fly into Tampa on a Monday night, get there at 10:30, and I always like to go to the local channel. You know, they have where you can buy local information, local news, all this kind of stuff. Some realtor had bought a 30-minute slot, and every 60 seconds was a new listing. I'm thinking, man, I hadn't seen that in 25 years. And then it dawned on me, you're in Tampa. Geezers are moving to Tampa. They don't have internet. Oh, and the geezers went out for the early bird special at 4:30. They got home at 6:30, went to bed, and they got up to go to the bathroom and couldn't back to sleep, and they watched TV, and that's how it works. I want y'all, and I got a link up here. I'm going to challenge each and every one of you to learn. This is one of my daily reads. Chain store age. It's all about retail and stores, like Kohl's and Walmart and that kind of stuff. But they are really hitting on technology. And think about this one. Good news is, Super Saturday, that's the Saturday before Christmas, last year in 2021, we had over 19% more people in stores in December of 2020, Super Saturday. But we had 26% fewer in 2021 in stores than we had in 2019, the year I want to compare it to. Is that kind of true about listings, touring listings? Yeah, all right. So all of a sudden I'm perking up saying, gee, this sounds like the same thing. So they had this article on, they interviewed several thousand people that were in retail stores shopping and said, what else do you want in the store? And there was one section that said technology. And here's what came up in technology. 38% in the store want reviews, photos, and videos online. And then I'm going home that night. My wife asked me to pick up some stuff at the H-E-B, our biggest grocery store in Texas chain. And I'm going down this aisle thinking, I wonder how we use this. And I see 3 people pull out their iPhone or smartphone, and they scan the thing, and they're looking at reviews on the product, food product they're getting ready to buy. And then I realized, yeah, 34% want QR codes to be scanned and read. So realtors, I had this bingo, this epiphany. When you list a house, very often the buyer needs to know what your utility costs are. By the thermostat should be a QR code that anyone who walks through that house, in other words, not everyone, They can scan that QR code and they could get immediately the last 3 years of utilities. Who likes that idea? Look what I just did for you. Smarter, not harder. We do it in industrial properties already. You got QR codes. 33% want live, up-to-date in-store star ratings. Realtors, are you rated? Shouldn't you put your star rating on there? Because you just listed this house at a super high price. If people click that and realize, hey, they sell a bunch of real estate, don't you think that's a way to market yourself? And all it did is you had to create that QR code and occasionally update it. Who's liking this stuff? Anyone? I think digital's the way. 32% want virtual displays. It's chain store age. It's this review. You will get this, because we'll get it to everyone in here via all the people in here that participate. I want you to download. It's all about retail. I want you to download and read it. Who's going to do it for me? It's a 10-minute read. I want you to think creatively. Creativity's got to be it. Now, I've never been to Leaning Tower of Pisa. Who has in here? Do you have the pictures like this? Were they that good? I think the lady on the left's awesome. Guy on the right, so much. Let me show you a lady that elevated this on the left. Get it? And a dog. Yeah. Okay. All right. One of my favorites, these guys stealing it. I want you to be creative in the way you do business. Now, we're going into 2022, and I think it's going to be a pretty good year. We're sliding into 2022. 2022 is going to happen whether you want it to or not. Am I right? Oh, by the way, he's got on tails and a glass of red wine going down this hillside. This is a new trend. I'm going to have 12 of these kind of videos of people sliding on ice. You guys could qualify here. Am I right? I love this one. This is New York City. Let it slide, 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 slide. I'd have fallen down and broke my hip and died right there. Oh, this next guy, you got to watch him. He's going to slide, and there's a wall he has to jump over, and he's going to look exclusively at the camera. Just watch this guy. Oh, yeah, that's not this. This is dogs. Look how happy that black lab is on the left. Slide, baby, slide, slide, slide. This is the guy. Watch the guy. Keep watching. He's looking straight at the camera, cup of coffee, jumps, hits the water, and you know that's cold. Guys, slide in. It's going to happen whether you want it to. Oh, and this last person, drink your coffee, read your newspaper, probably digitally on your iPad, and just jump into it. Pretty cool, right? So, talk about change. We're going to go back to that change thing. When I was a kid, that's the official sports drink. Today, I think they call it child abuse, but yeah, it's the way it is. Guys, we got to get with it. And lastly, I want you to think digital. I want you to think digital everything. Who agrees with me on this? Digital everything? If you don't think you can make a change, just take a look at this sign. 1938 Girl Scout tree planting. You got a forest now. Go out and plant your forest this year, guys. We'd appreciate it.